Hey listeners, if you like this podcast, check out our other shows, The Study Table and Training Table. Listen to archived content and in-depth interviews with insiders working with student athletes. It's on our website, www.fredopie.com. Welcome to the Dinner Table, a discussion with food as a lens into cultures and societies. I'm your host, Fred Opie.
Well, it was a depression for the white man back in the 30s in this country, and in Harlem it was devastation. Having a dime or so to find a place to eat, it was always something that you be careful how you spent it because you wanted to make that meal count.
Today we take a look at Harlem during the Great Depression. Longtime Harlem resident Dorothy Evelyn.
I was born in 24. By 29, the stock market crashed. Most people lost their jobs. They sold apples on the street. The government came in and gave out, you lined up and you got surplus food for your children. Basic, like dry fruits and cereal, cold, mostly hot cereal like Wheatina, cream of wheat meal, cod oil. We only drank lots of cod. And during that time, things were very hard. She cooked her same traditional home cooking. Biscuits and rolls, and the neighborhood kids would come up to, say, Mrs. Van Camper, we smelled the bread. Could we have some? And she never turned anybody away from the door. But I know St. Mark's Catholic Church in 138th Street. And after they fed their school children, whatever was left over, neighborhood kid would go there and get soup, and we called it prison bread at that time, brown bread. Peanut butter on one side and jelly on the other. I'll never forget that because I went in many of those lines, not because I had to, because my friends were going in there and I followed suit.
Longtime Harlem resident Rudy Bradshaw.
When it's a recession in the white man's country, it's a depression in Harlem. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a depression for the white man back in the 30s in this country, and in Harlem it was devastation. Those that had a job, they were thanking their Almighty every day. Those that didn't, and a lot of young brothers didn't. Guys like Langston Hughes were doing WPA works, and people of his intellect and guys who didn't have his sort of intellect were doing much worse. So having a dime or so to find a place to eat was always something that you be careful how you spent it because you wanted to make that meal count. Guys would hunt for a Father Divine.
Father Divine, a.k.a. the Reverend General Jealous Divine, and a.k.a. George Baker, operated inexpensive integrated feast during the Great Depression. Divine was a migrant from the Deep South, possibly from the Carolinas or Georgia. Zora Hurston, a contemporary Divine, wrote, "If Father Divine should come to control 30 million votes, the Senate chamber would be something to see. All of the seats in the center taken out and a large table loaded down with baked hams, turkeys, cakes, and pies, all ready for the legislative session to begin."
My name is Carlton Mabee. I was born December 25, 1914. Came back to New York as a student. Columbia University. They call them banquets most commonly, and they also regarded them as communion. The Father Divine had only one sacrament, where some churches have 7. He had only one, and it was eating together with other people. Everybody knew about these things. Father Divine was extremely well known in the 1930s by the whole country. Everybody knew that he provided banquets and served many people free if they couldn't afford to pay for the food. I can't remember what street it was on. It was in Harlem when I went. Part of the reason for going was that the food was extremely inexpensive. It was liable to cost either 15 cents or 25 cents if you included dessert. That was the standard price. And I remember the banquet room being very large but not impressive, not with a high ceiling, a low ceiling, like it could have been even a basement. It was a large hall, and it was crowded. There were long tables, just crowded with people, mostly blacks, but a sprinkling of whites, and Father Divine's policy was to seat blacks and whites together. He was very much opposed to any kind of segregation, racial segregation. He fought it tooth and nail, and he believed that he was doing a lot of help by providing situations that were unsegregated. And singing was very much part of this banquet. You ate slowly. Different courses, different dishes were passed from time to time. They kept coming by. After a while, you just couldn't eat anymore. You passed them because you couldn't manage to eat anymore. But meantime, people were singing much of the time. And of course, I'm deeply moved by the kind of evangelistic songs that they were singing. They often sang songs whose tunes were familiar, but their words were likely to be their own.
More food than you could normally get during the 1930s.
Oh, yeah, more food as you could get for the price, but also more food than anybody would want to eat. It was just abundant and very well cooked. It's just delicious. I had no complaints about the food or whatever.
Historian Carlton Mabee, who attended graduate school at Columbia University during the Great Depression. We'll be right back. For more interviews and related content, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast distributors. Also, check out our website at www.fredopie.com. Ask questions on Facebook at Frederick Douglass Opie and on Twitter at Dr. Fred D. Opie. For information about advertising on the show, please email us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com.
If you're enjoying the show, check out the episode entitled Zora Neale Hurston and the WPA on the Dinner Table show page.
There's one thing that you notice between Zora and Langston Hughes. They've both, in their own writing, spent a lot of time talking about food. But why do you have some people writing so much about food? Maya Angelou's another one. If you look at her many memoirs, there's food all over it. I've come to the conclusion that starvation will do that to you. That it just has your mind on food even when you don't plan for it to be about food. So if you look at the writings of Langston Hughes, and he's also another person that has 2 memoirs, you will see that food is throughout.
Now back to the show. Longtime Harlem resident Dorothy Evelyn.
Did you ever go to one of Father Divine's Love Feast?
Oh, many. 10 cents and 15 cents. You get fried chicken, cornbread, macaroni and cheese.
Rudy Bradshaw.
These were like retreats from the rigors of, I'll use that word, depression.
Longtime Harlem residents Roy and Ruth Miller.
It was the cleanliness. It was impeccable.
That the food was good and very inexpensive.
Very inexpensive.
Inexpensive was the point.
And white tablecloth.
Dorothy Evelyn.
The Love Feasts were integrated, I understand, too. Is that correct?
Well, for 15 cents, you would go too. Go get fried fish, all you could eat.
Oh, good. You didn't feel any sense of proselytizing when you were there getting something to eat?
No.
Okay.
I didn't intend to change from my religion to theirs.
You just go.
It was a public place, and all you had to do was, he had a famous word, peace sister, peace brother.
And that's what you would say, get your food and keep on going.
Absolutely.
And so your mother would tell you, bring 15 cents, whatever, we need to go there.
Give you 15 cents and go down and eat dinner. Why should she cook? Well, she could give you 15 cents, you could eat all you want. That's what you would call her.
Oh, so,
You're fighting the system.
Historian Carlton Mabee.
Oh, I'm sure there's a mix of motives. There are all kinds of people curious for many different reasons. I think many people would regard it as an adventure. Sure, there was something of that in it for me and other people that I went for. You're doing something that most people don't do, but that makes it exciting, and it was very exciting to be doing this.
The Westbrook Theory.
one of the things that Robert Westbrook says in his book is that Father Divine was able to feed so many people because of he had, like you said, first of all, he kind of had a method to feeding his guests. He would make sure people filled up on liquids, teas, coffee, all kinds of liquids, and then he would bring, breads, and then it was fruits, and then by the time the meat came, like as you just mentioned, most people were full. Do you recall that at all?
No, I remember that Weisbrod says that, but I have no memory of that. I didn't realize anything like that was happening. It was, and I have not heard that in other people's comments. Weisbrod may have some reason to say that. Maybe it was true on some occasions, but I don't know that was a general policy on Divine's part.
Theater and Father Divine. Dorothy Evelyn.
Did you ever see Father Divine on any occasion that you were there?
He many times shook his hand on many. His foot never touched the concrete. He always had a red carpet spread out for him. That's what he walked on.
Historian Carlton Mabey.
And did he ever come the time you were there?
He was expected, and people hung around with the hope that he was going to come.
Uh-huh.
And there was a time when there was so much buzz in the air about his coming. I stayed very late one night, and he finally did show up. And when he showed up, then the crowd just breaks out in hysteria. And I think that hysteria partly comes from the excitement of having waited so long and finally seeing him. I think that's partly what he wanted, of course, extreme reaction. Many of his followers were genuinely adoring of that man. He was, of course, a very charismatic figure. And they really, many of them regarded him actually as a divine character. They called him God. And, of course, I would be very deeply suspicious of that. He was serving God's interests, something like that I could conceive of, and that's not beyond my conception at all.
Dorothy Evelyn.
He had them all over Harlem, and he also had a retreat someplace in Jersey.
Uh-huh.
I had a friend who wasn't a Father Divine participant, but she went to his retreat. Husband and wife couldn't be in the same place.
Okay.
Men was one place, segregated also. Men was one place, and the women was another. In the restaurant, it was integrated. You sat anywhere you want. In his retreat in Jersey, people went there because they ate just like they ate in his restaurant, and all you could eat.
Closing the doors.
Any idea when they started closing those places?
In the late 70s or 80s.
For more on Father Divine, Zora Neale Hurston, the Great Depression, Harlem, and related recipes, go to our blog, foodazalens.com. To check out our podcast archive, suggest show topics, and advertise on the show, and to book me as a guest and or speaker, visit our website, www.fredopie.com. That's www.fredopie.com. For information about advertising on the show, please email us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and be good.